Hi everyone, welcome to the next lesson, which is all about how to set up images and text boxes. So before we get on to that, we're going to cover off how you can make a bit of a shortcut to be able to set up your web page. So you might remember from previous lessons that we had a particular structure that we want for HTML, which is having things like a doc type and then having a header, a HTML, and within that a header and a body. But there is a shortcut to be able to create all that so you don't have to type it out every time. And that is if you put the exclamation mark into the text, you'll see that this sort of document, this information comes up. Now, if we push return, that will display it on the page. And if you have a look at what's there, it's kind of what's called a boilerplate, which is basically just the basics of a website. Now, it has a few extra things that we haven't really talked about, but these are just general settings. So, for example, this setting here, HTML has lang en, which means language is English. So that's really for the search engine. So, for example, if you're searching on for a particular subject, let's say I don't know, swimming or something like that, obviously there will be sites in English and there will be sites in French. So basically, it tells the search engine only to return things in English if the request is made in English, if that makes sense. So that's basically a shortcut there. So the first thing we're going to have a look at is text boxes. So text boxes can be created from pretty much any HTML tag. So you could create it with a P tag, you could create it with a H1 tag, and all of those sort of things. So they're all pretty much, you could do it with any type of tag. So if we just put in some sample text, so let's say we put in text, okay, and then we click Control to save it, and we have a look at our screen. Whoops, wrong one. We can see we've got text on the screen, okay, and if we put another p tag in there, so we have two of them, so I'll put another one in, and we might put that as test1 and test2. We save it again. What you'll see is that every time I add a p tag, it puts a value on the next line. So that is actually a default setting of that particular tag. So there are certain, when you put a tag down, it has certain default stylings, and basically the default styling of a p tag is that it is a element that will take up the entire line and not allowing other elements to go on the same line. And the way that you can look at this, if you go to the inspect section, you'll see that if we go to our elements, you'll see that basically when I click on that and highlight the element, so if I click on the corner bit there and highlight the element, what you'll see is that it has taken up the entire line. Okay, so that's how you can tell. So if you don't know the defaults, you don't need to remember them. Okay, so if we wanted to, in this case, if we wanted to put text side by side next to each other, we can change the setting, to change that default value to what we want. So if I want to create text side by side, I can do that by changing the styling or the parameters on which the thing appears. So I'm going to target just p tags, and the element of the default setting is in the display setting. So what that is doing is that the default setting is a block setting. Okay, so if we were to put that in there, what happens is that no change would occur to the site. So if we would save that, it's not going to make any difference, but that's the default value. Now, if we want to have it so it only takes up the space it needs, it's referred to as an inline block. So an inline block just takes up the space that's required. So Control save it and have a look. What happens is the text moves side to side because it only now takes the space up. Now, if you want to see that more clearly, we can put a background color in to show that effect. Okay, so you'll see that it's only it's only taking up the space that it requires. If we go to, and you can also obviously see this by using our inspection again and clicking on the element. And so if we look on the element, you can see that it's only taking up the space that it needs. Okay, so that's pretty much how you, pretty much what that particular element does. Now, if we want to create a text box, we can actually define the height and the width. So for example, if we want to have a height of, let's say, 100 pixels, we can just set that. And let's say we want a width of, let's say 300 pixels. Okay, now if we go and have a look, we've got our background color and you've got your two essentially boxes of text. So that's basically what you're looking at. Now, if we wanted to move the text around, we can center the text using the text aligned property. Okay, and then if we wanted to center it, what it's going to do is push the text into the middle of that box. So you can see that creating a text box means you can start to position things in the way that you want, using a text box rather than using padding or margins or all that sort of stuff. And with your thing, you can also change it to N, for example, and that's going to push the text, or it should push the text to the end, so in this case, right aligned and left aligned. Okay, so we'll stick with center. Now that's essentially all a text box is, and then you can start to apply the same types of styling that you did for everything else. So for example, if you wanted it to have nice rounded corners, you can go and do a put a border radius on to be able to get it to have rounded corners. But in essence, that's the way that you can create blocks on a web page. So that's pretty much text box in a nutshell, and you just need to play around with the style and styling as required. And obviously you can also put text boxes within text boxes. So for example, if I decided that I wanted to put in text boxes within text boxes, so I'm just going to take a copy of this one. Just copy. And let's say I'm going to put element test 1, and I'm going to change this one to 2, and we might add one more. Okay, there we go, and we'll save it. What you'll see with your text boxes is you're creating many text boxes. So that's another way to do it. Okay. All right, so that's basically text boxes. Now, if we want to do an image now, I'm going to show you how to actually embed an image into your website. So the way that you do that is using a thing called an image or IMG tag. Okay, and this is one of those tags that's like the doc type up the top, that it doesn't have a closing tag. So it's just one tag. Okay, and what we need to tell it is basically that we need to get our source of our image. Now, in my files here, and you probably won't have the same sort of things. You probably need to just download an image from a website or something like that. I have because you can see I'm starting to build up many files here. In my plan your patch, which is the thing that I'm in currently, I have a whole heap of HTML and style files here, but I also have a whole heap of images. There's a whole heap of them. Now, if I want to access those files, but I'm not in the same drive, what I need to do is quote the subfolder. And when you're doing your subfolders, you should be storing images in a separate subfolder. So the way that we can access that is by referencing it is just the image. So images, which is the name of the subfolder, and then it gives me a list of all of the different images that we have. So if I pick this one, for example, which is a picture of a vegetable garden, and I save it, you'll get some interesting effects. You'll get this massive picture. So the picture is just absolutely huge. So that's the full size of the image. So because it's a high resolution picture, it takes up a large amount of space. But what we can do is that we can set that to the height that we want. So if we, in this case, and I'm going to target the class, not the class, the HTML tag, and I'm going to just create height, and let's just say we want 300 pixels. Yes. Okay, and now we've brought the image down to a size that we can see the total image. Okay, so that basically allows the image to bring down to the size that you can see on the screen easily. Now, if we want to change the size, so for example, instead of 300, I want to go down to 200. What you'll notice is that when I click it down to 200 and save it again, the image gets smaller, so it gets smaller in height, which is what we've set, but it also moves in proportion. So basically it just says, right, this side here is going down by 2/3, so therefore the width of it needs to go down by 2/3. However, the problem with that is that on a website, you often have a certain space in which you want to put an image. So we also need to define, we sometimes will need to define the width. So if I define the width, and let's just say for the moment that I make it 300 pixels, let's just say something like that. Control. As luck would have it, I've actually managed to do the right ratio. So let's say we do just to distort it. So if we make it 100 pixels, we have our space where we want our image. The problem is that the computer says, right, we're fitting that image, whether it looks good or not, into that area. So basically it just squeezes it and says, right, that's the space you have available. So the problem you then have is that if you have a specific space that you want to put an image in, you have a problem with distortion of the picture. So the way that you can overcome that is there's another parameter which is object, which we can use object fit. And the one that we can do is cover. And so if we do that, what happens is we still fill our space, but now the image is no longer distorted. Now, so basically it's centered the image on that area, and then we've got overflow of the picture, which you don't see because it's restricted by almost the vision of window. So if, for example, if we go back to this for a moment without the restrictions, just take these back. I'm going to save it. Okay, so we take our picture back here. So let's say we want to have just that. We want to have the bottom half of this picture appearing. Okay, so we want probably instead of 300 pixels, we probably want probably about 150, and we want to take the bottom area of this image. Okay, because we don't want to see a wheelbarrow and some other stuff in the background. So we can do this. So let's say we want to set our height first at 150, and let's say we want our image to fit into a width of let's say 300, which should seriously distort the image. Yep, so it's squeezed it down and flattened it out. So what we then want to do is we can say, okay, now we don't want it to distort, so we can use the same styling that we used previously, which is object fit. And we want to cover. And by the way, there are a few when you're doing these things too. You can see there's several of these sort of things, so it's useful just to try out a few of these or have a read of what um, what each one of them actually does, and then have a bit of a play. Okay, so you can, sorry, I didn't do it there properly, but you can move down the thing, down with the cursor to be able to, and it'll give you an explanation about each one. So it's worth trying a few of them anyway, just to see what they do, because as you build up your knowledge of these things, the more you know about different properties, the more advantageous it is. Okay, so if we do that, we have our image now. Okay, and now we have the image no longer distorted, but the problem is that we want to see um, the bottom half of the image only. What we can do is we can use another property which is called object position. Okay, and then we can do things like put right. Okay, and if I put that on now, okay, let's say we might do bottom instead. Bottom. Okay. Okay, and you'll see that the image is now being pushed up from the bottom so that the image starts from the bottom. Okay, so basically you can use this to position the image left or right. Now, if you want to be more, and so there's bottom, left, right, and so if we do top, for example, and do it again, you'll see you're seeing the top part of the image but not the bottom. So if we wanted to, for example, position the image halfway down, we can also add in pixels. So for example, I want to go down 10 pixels. I can do that as well. If I save it, you'll see the image has moved down a little bit. And if I wanted to go a bit further, 15, let's say, I'll save it again, you'll see the image will have moved down a bit further again. Okay, so you can use this with either top, bottom, left, or right to be able to position the image where you would like it, so you can control what the user sees and the size at which they see. Okay, so that's basically how you format images, and of course you can always apply other images, oops, you can apply other sort of styling to them. So for example, we can put in radius, as long as they're appropriate, of course, to the image, and you can see we're getting nice rounded corners. And let's say instead we wanted a bit of a washed out effect, we might put in opacity, okay, and then we might put that at 0.5, for example, and you'll see that the image will become more of a background image. So if you wanted to put text on top of it or something like that, you could do those sorts of things. So essentially, that's how you control an image, and how you do that sort of thing. Now, the one thing I did not cover with this image, and I forgot, so I will cover it right now, is that in these images, one of the other common parameters that is set when the image is a thing called alt. Okay, and what alt is it's just an alternative the should the image not be available. What are we going to put on the screen? So if I want to put the image not being available, I can say picture of garden. Okay, now if I do that and save it, it makes no difference to the appearance of what's on the text, and that's because it's found the image. But if I change the name of the image to something which I know is not there, and then save it again, what I'll see is that I'll get a picture of the image. And you also notice that the styling of that picture of the image, because it's looking a little bit washed out, is still being applied to the alternate text. Okay, so that's basically how you style images. So what you guys need to go to have a bit of a play around is down the bottom. There is some images where you've got to set some images, make some rounded corners, do a circular image, and then if you're feeling up to it and you want to try creating boxes with different things in it by controlling a few of the properties, give them a go as well. All right, so that is the things you need to do. I hope you found that useful, and we'll catch you for the next lesson. Cheers.